Welcome back to the Nowhere Emporium. We're on chapter 5, Through the Doors. Daniel's eyes cracked open a fraction. He screwed up his face at the sunlight flooding the room. He sat up, rubbed his eyes with a knuckle. The blurred edges of his mind began to focus. He lay in a small, comfortable bed in a cosy room with an arched wooden roof. At the opposite end of the room were two doors, one of which was open. Through the open door, Daniel could hear the sound of birdsong and the babbling whisper of running water. He shuffled to the edge of the bed, swung his legs from beneath the thick duvet. His bare feet sank into a deep carpet. Memories came bursting back, of running through Glasgow, Spud chasing close behind, of the horror as the car came towards him, of hitting the hard ground. Daniel climbed from the bed and stumbled towards a small mirror that hung between the doors. He gazed at his reflection, expecting to see cuts and bruises, but there were no marks on him, no sign that he had been hurt at all. A great fear began to build in his chest. His lungs tightened, his head spun. What if he had been hit by a car? Am I dead? He did not have time to contemplate this question, because a flicker of movement drew his attention to the window, and he realized that a girl was staring at him through the glass. He stumbled backwards as she moved to the door. She stood in the doorway, brushing long, wild curls from her grey eyes. She looked him up and down, arms crossed. "Enjoy your snooze, did you?" she said. "Nice and comfy." She looked around the room and shook her head. "Unbelievable. This is nicer than my room." Who are you?" said Daniel. "Where am I? Am I dead?" The girl screwed up her face, took another step into the room. "Dead? What are you going on about? Why would you be dead?" Daniel blinked. But I was standing right in the middle of a busy road. A car was going to hit me." The girl tapped her foot on the floor. "He must have saved you. I wonder why. What's your name?" Daniel," said Daniel. "Who are you talking about? Who must have saved me?" "This is all very strange," she said. "No one new ever shows up here." She narrowed her eyes. "Nobody real, anyway. Stay put. I'm going to find out exactly what's going on." And she slipped off through the blue door frame before Daniel could ask her name, or why she was so interested in him, or what she had meant about no one real ever showing up. Daniel patted himself on the chest. He felt real. He certainly didn't feel dead. Then again, how would he know what being dead felt like? He stared at the door through which the girl had left and tried the handle. The door was locked. So he went to the second door, the open one. A hilltop view lay before him, patchwork fields and a forest beyond, under a crystal blue sky. The air was warm and as sweet as honey. Daniel stepped down some narrow wooden stairs into a meadow of waist-high grass. He realised he'd been in a wooden caravan, the sort of wagon he'd imagined travelling folk might use, or circus performers in olden times. The wagon was painted a deep shimmering blue, decorated with gold flourishes. Something struck him then. If this was all real, how could that girl possibly have left through the door inside the wagon? He was thirsty. His tongue was sticking to the roof of his mouth. He moved towards the stream, bent down and drank. The water was ice cold and pure, and probably the best drink he'd ever had. "Ah! Awake, I see." At the sound of the voice, Daniel spat out a mouthful of water, spun, caught a fleeting glimpse of a dusty grey suit, and then tripped over his own tangled feet, tumbling to the grass. "Oh, very graceful," said the man in the suit. "The Royal Ballet will be knocking on my door at any time now." Daniel scrambled to his feet, rubbing his elbow, and recognised the owner of the Nowhere Emporium immediately. "You! What are you doing here? What am I doing here? Am I dreaming?" The man in the dusty suit scratched his nose. His wild hair swayed in the breeze. "We're all dreaming, Daniel Holmes, in our own way. Follow me, if you will." At this, he turned and marched up the wooden steps into the wagon. Daniel hurried after him. "Wait! Where's the girl?" he asked, once they were inside. "Girl?" the man said. "Don't bother yourself with her. You have more important things to think about at the moment." He opened the blue door and indicated the shadowy beyond. "This way, all will be explained." Daniel took a slow step towards the door. He peered through. "That's not right. That can't be right." Beyond the blue door was a square entrance hall, like the inside of a castle, that seemed to climb up and up forever, crisscrossed with 100 or 1,000 entangled and intertwining stairways, all lit by the flickering glow of torchlight. The man in the suit stepped into the hall. "Don't look so worried," he said. "Nothing can harm you in here. I checked the corridors yesterday, caught the last of the escaped lions." He wheeled away and began to stride across the hall. Daniel was unsure what to do. He watched the man in the suit, and then his eyes widened. "Lions? Hey," he said. Wait up." Chapter 6. A Bargain with Lucien Silver. "Would you like a cup of tea?" The man in the grey suit sat behind his desk, stirring tea in a china cup. "No," said Daniel. He watched a small whirlpool form in the liquid and tried to sound braver than he felt. "No tea, thank you. Just tell me what's going on." He had followed the man across the hallway, passing dozens of staircases to another doorway, this one with a curtain of deep red velvet. When he had brushed through the curtain, Daniel had found himself back in the Emporium. The man in the suit sipped at his tea, then returned his cup to the saucer on the desk. "There really is no way of making what I'm about to say any easier for you to hear or comprehend," he began. "So, here it is. Daniel Holmes, you should be dead." At this, he stood and began to wander around the shop, his hands clasped behind his back. "Allow me to explain. My name is Lucien Silver. I am a traveller. This emporium is my means of transport. It dances through time, taking me from city to city, town to town, village to village, all over the globe." "Through time?" said Daniel. "Like Doc Brown?" Mr. Silver gave him a blank look. "Who?" "Doc Brown," said Daniel. "You know, Marty McFly, Back to the Future. It's an old movie. I saw it at the children's home. Doc and Marty have a time machine." Mr. Silver shrugged. "I do not get to go to the cinema much," he said. His grey eyes sparkled in the light of the fire. "And my emporium is not just a time machine." He pointed to the red curtain. "Beyond that curtain, beyond the many staircases we have just passed, lie my wonders. Think of the emporium as being like a tree. The hall of the staircases you just walk through, that is the trunk. Branching off it are the passageways, hundreds of them, where the wonders lie. Wherever I visit, customers are drawn to this place. For a small fee, I allow them to step through the curtain and experience what it's like to fly among the endless stars, or taste the colour of sunset, and explore the very boundaries of imagination. I allow them to visit my wonders. Of course, I cannot allow my customers to remember what they have seen in the Emporium, not any more. Many years ago, when the shop first opened, they remembered everything, but we soon became too busy to cope with the crowds. Now they leave with a foggy glow of happiness, perhaps even the sense that their life has changed forever, but they cannot recall the shop. To them, it's as if we never existed." He frowned, and a sudden weight seemed to cause him to sag. "When you ran away, straight onto that road, you nearly died." Daniel opened his mouth, but found his throat thick and choked. "If that's true, if I nearly died, then why am I here? How did I get out alive?" "Because I interfered," said Silver. "I saved you, Daniel. I don't know if it was the right thing to do. It was not an easy decision to make, but the day you returned to the Emporium, the moment I realized you remembered being here the previous day, I knew you were special. I knew there must be a reason why you came to my attention." "What sort of reason?" "I don't know yet," said Mr. Silver, drumming his fingers on his chin, "but I am offering you the chance of a lifetime, my boy, the chance of 100 lifetimes. Come with me, learn about the Emporium, prove that I was right to interfere, see the world in a way nobody else can. What do you say?" Daniel said nothing. He stared out of the Emporium's windows. Glasgow was hidden beneath a thick veil of swirling fogs. "You need persuasion," said Mr. Silver. "Seeing is believing, or so they say." He strode towards the shop door, reaching for an elaborate metal instrument on the wall. To Daniel it looked like a complicated cross between a clock and a compass. There were many dials and rings of numbers set within smaller rings. Mr. Silver began to manipulate the hands of the instrument. When he was satisfied, he spun and headed for the fire, scooping a handful of coal from a bucket on the floor. He tossed the coal into the fire. There was a great roar, and the flames became so bright that Daniel shielded his eyes. For the briefest moment, the flames burned a deep red, and the fire exploded, sending a plume of soot billowing into the store. As Daniel coughed the soot from his lungs, a bar of bright sunlight began to burn through the smoke. When the soot had settled, Mr. Silver stood by the door of the Emporium and opened it with a flourish. "See for yourself," he said. Daniel stepped into the doorway and felt a warm breeze on his face. He had been expecting, of course, to look out into a Glasgow street to see shoppers bustling past, weighed down with bags. But that is not what he saw. He inched out of the door onto a wide walkway. The air was warm, the sky awash with deep reds and purples. Beyond the walkway, where a road should surely have been, there was a canal lined with tall, narrow buildings, all columns and spires and colourful shutters. What happened to Glasgow?" Daniel said, ducking back into the Emporium as a passing old woman laden with a heavy basket stopped and peered suspiciously at him. Mr. Silver shut the door and made sure the sign in the window read, "Closed." "We left," he said, as though this was the most regular occurrence in the world. That's Venice. We're in Venice now." He glanced at the instrument on the wall. "The year is 1854. July, I believe." Daniel craned his neck to get a better view from the window. He wiped the glass, which was foggy from his breath. He tried to find some words. "It's impossible, yet we are here," said Mr. Silver. Daniel felt the need to sit down. "So we've just... This is... Really?" "Indeed," said Silver. "But, I mean, how? Just how?" Daniel's eyes widened. "It's magic, isn't it? It has to be. How else can we have just come from a caravan in a meadow that's inside a room? There's no other way for all this to be real, to be happening." Mr. Silver smiled. "One thing at a time, Mr. Holmes. One thing at a time." "And you want me to come with you all around the world?" A pause. Daniel narrowed his eyes. "What's the catch?" "The catch, Daniel Holmes, is that you will work to earn your place here. What I am offering is not a holiday. It is an opportunity, a challenge. You must show me I was correct to bring you here, that you are, as I suspect, special. If you succeed in that, then the Emporium will become your home." "And what happens if I don't come up to scratch?" said Daniel. "You sack me? Leave me somewhere halfway around the world, 100 years from before I was born?" "I will do no such thing," said Mr. Silver. "If you do not belong in the Emporium, you will simply be returned to your own time, your old life." He offered a hand. "So, do we have a bargain?" Daniel organised the facts in his mind. He was an orphan leading a miserable life. He didn't have any friends. A gang of bullies had made it their mission to ensure his life was uncomfortable as possible. He was lost. And now he'd been invited to escape all of that and travel through time in a magical shop with a man he suspected was either a genius or a lunatic, or maybe both. He had the opportunity to be someone else, even if it was just for a while. And if he was someone else, maybe he wouldn't feel so alone. "I'll do it," he said.